My name is Najer, and I work with Migrant Workers Alliance for Change. The Migrant Workers Alliance for Change is a national organization that supports migrant workers across Canada. I'm in charge of the seafood workers, so those who work in the processing plants. And we work with 5 different sectors: undocumented workers, farm workers, Spanish and English. I do the one in Spanish and English as well. Care workers, international students, and we belong as with Madhu Verma to a national coalition, which is a Migrant Rights Network, which is an umbrella, national umbrella of 40 organizations, and we do our best to not just to provide as a migrant workers, as a MWAC, to provide services to migrant workers, but the main goal is to organize them, to empower them to make decisions and to fight back at the workplaces, communities, student in the campus as well. So we run municipal and provincial campaigns, and the main we advocate for a permanent resident status for all migrant workers. That means undocumented workers up to those workers with a closed work permit as well.
Yeah. Also, at the Madhu Center, we're mainly advocating for the same changes. We mainly work for people in the fish plant industry in the northern part of New Brunswick. Unfortunately, whenever you come from a different country, it's not from Canada, Canada is depicted as the 8th wonder of the world. Everything is amazing here in Canada, and nobody talks about the abuses that come into Canada that could happen when you come as a temporary foreign worker in Canada. In 2023, I remember we had the opportunity to meet with the Special Rapporteur from the United Nations, Mr. Obokata, and we conclude all together that the temporary foreign worker program and the closed work permit program are breeding ground for modern day slavery. So that's something we're fighting against.
But who are the migrant workers in Canada and in New Brunswick, and how do they look like, and what do they like, and where do they live? We know that Canada has always had a temporary migrant workers from back in the days when Chinese came and helped this economy with creating and building the railroad. And we also have a permanent migrants, those who come here with a permanent resident status. So those are the 2 types of migrants that we see here. There's one type that comes with as a refugee claimants, and those who are pretty wealthy, who comes here, well, opens the doors are open up for those wealthy migrants who want to come here. So those are the 2 types of migrants that we see here in not just in New Brunswick but across Canada. So we're going to be talking about those 2 specific, like for example, in across Canada, most of the people who become a permanent resident, they do it in different ways. There are a few ways that you can become a permanent resident if the government lets you to become one of them. And some of them come as refugees, as I mentioned before. Some of them come as a business, in the business class, those wealthy ones. And there are little programs called provincial nominee programs that each province have created to attract people for certain industries to, again, to supply the labor shortage that we have in different provinces, but also to fulfill and have a pool of, can call this cheap labor to those multi-billion companies, or those billionaires in Canada who can access to this cheap labor from migrant workers. So the beginning of the temporary foreign workers in New Brunswick, and we also we have migrant workers who are in a closed work permit, open work permits as well. Those are international students and those who come to work in those different industries that I mentioned before, and the permanent residents. In those 2 sectors, they have a different set of rights. Like for example, if you come here with a permanent resident, your rights are guaranteed. You have access to services. You have access to bring your family with you, and you have a stability in the country. On the other side, it is pretty much the opposite.
Yeah, and the main question is, why is these workers coming into Canada? The reason is because no permanent resident or no Canadian citizen is willing to do these jobs, or there is not enough people in certain areas that are willing to do this job. And we have to fulfill, to fulfill these labor shortages with people from abroad. So in the 50s, in 1950s, the government of Canada signed with the government of Mexico and some other Latin American and Caribbean countries like Jamaica, for example, an agreement to start the seasonal agricultural working program. So workers from Mexico and Jamaica are going to come to Canada and start working in these farms. Later on, the temporary foreign worker program was started, and it has been like this for more than 50 years. And little changes has started. Main problem with the temporary foreign worker program is that the employer has total control of the worker. They come here, as Niger said, with closed work permits. A closed work permit means that you can only work for the company that is hiring you. So this is the main difference that, for example, Niger said, if you come here as a as a permanent resident, you have the ability to work for whoever you want. You can have 2 or 3 jobs depending on your abilities or your time or whatever. These workers can only work for one employer. What if the season is not good? Because lobster season is unpredictable, right? If you cannot get your 30 or 40 hours guarantee. So you start working less and less and less. You have a contract for 1 year or 2 years. If the season goes wrong, you're disposable. Go back to your country. We don't need you anymore, right? You are essential for our community because we need you. But at the same time, you are disposable. When I don't need you anymore, go back home. I don't need you. So these are the main issues why we need foreign hand labor. And of course, as Niger said, it's because it's cheaper. It's cheaper to pay a Mexican, it's cheaper to pay a Peruvian, it's cheaper to pay a Philippine to come to Canada and work in exploitative conditions than hiring a Canadian and a permanent resident that has granted all the rights.
Yeah, just last year in New Brunswick, more than 15,000 work permits were issued in New Brunswick. Those include international students, agriculture workers, fishery workers, those workers who work in the food industry and the transportation as well. So what we've been seeing is that there is an increase of temporary foreign workers from 1997 in New Brunswick up to now, that we have around in the seafood industry, we have between, we'll say 4,500 to 5,000 workers just working in that industry. And again, the main industries that they work is agriculture, mostly in Ontario, BC, and Quebec. But in New Brunswick, we're seeing as well around between 500 and 1,000 workers that comes to Ontario to work in farms. The seafood industry in BC and New Brunswick are the ones who are bringing more workers. We also have seen an increase of temporary foreign workers coming into service industries like restaurants, cleaning, truck driving, and care workers as well. And all of these workers have the same precarious status because they are on the closed work permit. So one thing that the closed work permit regime has imposed on those workers is that they're tied to their bosses. So those migrants can only work for only one employer. So that means employer is able to abuse them, use them 24/7. So the worker must be available 24/7. Let's say if a Sunday, 5 or 6 p.m., this fishery plant got some lobster, the workers can go back to work at any time, like 7 p.m. on Sundays, or not working on Monday. So they don't have a set schedule to work. So that's one type of abuse that we're seeing a lot. The other thing is that they don't have healthcare. Like in New Brunswick, you must be here for at least 12 months. And most of the permits that we're seeing are between 6 months, 9 months, some of them 12 months. So that means that they're not allowed to get sick. And even if they get sick, they're not allowed to complain because the employers are punishing them. And because they are in remote areas where there's no internet, especially in New Brunswick, and everything is so far away, no transportation, they don't speak the language, so that they end up suffering and not telling the employer, because what the employers usually do is that they send them back right away. The other type of abuses that we're seeing is that they live in bosses control housing. So that means the bosses are providing houses to the workers, but these houses are not in good conditions. For example, I have a case in the Acadian Peninsula where 43 workers are in the same house. So imagine how much money this landlord is making out of these workers. But the landlord is tied with the employer. So it's usually what happens in small towns is the employer is the friend of the taxi driver, friend of the guy who owns the grocery store, and the guy who owns the houses and the services as well. So we're seeing that in these areas, workers are being controlled. They are not allowed to have friends. They're not allowed to bring people over. And if they do, they're getting trouble. And some of these houses, like for example, in the Basin End area, you'll see the houses with security cameras 24/7. So that means that the workers are being watched by the employers or the supervisors.
Yeah, and it's really sad because most of the workers, they came here with illusions and they try to they have to feed two families. They have to feed themselves over here and send back money back to their country. Otherwise, that's the main reason why they came here. So unfortunately, the abuses are on the rise. When I first started at the Madu Center, we had around 20 cases in the first year. Now that has grown over, we're in October, it's almost 80 cases. And the year is not ending, right? Haven't ended yet. So that is the main issue that we have in Canada and here in New Brunswick. However, there are other issues that are out of control of the Canadian government, because these people actually is paying to come to Canada to recruitment agencies that are tied with employers. And they go, I'm not sure if they go 50-50, 60-40, whatever. But they are, most of them, when we do the intakes, they say, oh, I pay to come here. So my profile can be in top of list. So they have to pay to come here to get abused. And unfortunately, they have to endure those abuses because, as Niger mentioned, you are going to be flagged as problematic and you're going to be sent back to your country. Or even worse, you are not going to be considered for next season. So the employer has all the control, all the power, and you cannot complain. Also, you are not allowed to get sick, as Niger mentioned, because even though they do have a private insurance that the employer by supplying a private insurance for them, which is called the COWAN, this private insurance make them pay up front and then get reimbursed. But with a minimum wage job, or maybe 17, 16 an hour, which is what we see in the contracts, and 20 and 15 hours per week, depending on how good the season is, nobody is going to be able to afford that Medicare. So that's why we are demanding status for all, and to abolish this temporary foreign working program the way it is. It needs a lot of reforms. The closed work permit ties the worker to the employer, and they are not allowed to complain. They are not allowed to leave. This is modern day slavery, and we need to end that.
Yeah, it is pretty sad to see workers getting sick. Since I covered the whole Atlantic, I can say that because workers move around. I've been seeing workers from Newfoundland, PEI, and New Brunswick. Just last season, a couple of months ago, a worker got sick. She was from the area of Basin End. She ended up in the hospital with emergency surgery. And we were trying to support her, but the employer came and convinced her and their family members to bring her back to Mexico. And they even paid an ambulance to take her back to Mexico. And we're seeing a lot of cases that if they leave the country, there is nothing they can do. Like the employer promised them, we'll bring you back next year. Don't worry, we're gonna cover all those bills. But that's a lie. And we, as a MWAC, we can't do anything without the workers' permission, right? Our organization is migrant-led, so we let the workers, we inform the worker about the risk of going back. But if they decide not to do anything, then we can't do anything. And we're seeing this a lot lately. Injuries at work, for example, in the area of the Kenyan Peninsula in a construction company, there was a guy who cut his, I think, 1 or 2 fingers, and they sent him to the hospital, and he was working the next 3 days, he was at work. And people were telling him, do something, but he didn't want to lose his job. So he didn't do anything. Even though we wanted to do something, he didn't want to do anything. So we've been working in collaboration with the ER department in Miramichi. That's where the office is for MWAC. And we have good friends who are doctors there. So every time that there is a migrant worker there, they call me, and I usually go there or talk to them on the phone to tell them what to do next. Because as Christian mentioned, they do have a private insurance, but they don't know the policy number. Sometimes they don't even know what insurance is. So in order for them to access to the private insurance, you have to help them. And they're afraid to ask the employer because then the employer is going to retaliate against them. So there is a lot of challenges, especially when we don't have, as a migrant rights organization, we don't have the infrastructure. Like, for example, in New Brunswick, and right now it's the case in Ontario too. There's not enough lawyers to do cases, and there is not, I don't think legal aid here covers any of these type of abuses. So workers rely on organizations like us, and sometimes we're out of capacity that in our case, we try to refer workers under other jurisdictions, but because the cuts are being really hard on these organizations, we don't have the funding, we don't have enough human resources or volunteers to do this type of work.
Yeah, and well, you're going to talk about food distribution first, and then we're going to start breaking these myths.
Yeah.
Right. I believe we still have some minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So food distribution in 2022, 68 workers from the Kenyan Peninsula called me, and one of the workers called me representing the 68 workers, and this lady was crying and saying, we haven't eaten for like 3 or 4 days. We're not working. The employer's not paying us. We have to pay rent, and what should we do? So at that moment, I called the government. I say, look, there's a crisis here. Do you guys have any support for migrant workers? They said, no, there is a support for employers, but not for migrant workers. That's not a thing in New Brunswick. So I was like, okay, what should I do? So I started calling around, and I got connected with the Food Depot, and we made an agreement with our organization and Food Depot to bring food to these workers, right? So they didn't have enough food because the food bank is in the small areas, they don't have the capacity as well, and they don't have the resources as well. So they donated some food gift cards, and when the employer found out that they were talking to me, to the organization, he forces some of the employees to return those gift cards back to the food bank. And there was a little bit of a controversial there. The mayor kind of like got involved, and workers were crying, what should we do? We don't want to get in trouble with the employer, but we need food. So in that moment, we decided to create the food distribution program. And with Madhu Verma, since that time, we've been able to distribute more than 700 food boxes to workers in the Kenyan Peninsula. And this is, the contracts of the workers stipulates that they must get paid 30 hours per week, even if they don't work, because there is an employer's responsibility to provide them at least with this amount of money. Most of these workers, they don't get paid. But in that particular company that I'm talking about, we were able to organize those workers and we created a strategy for them to meet with the employer and force the employer to pay them the 30 hours. That campaign was successful. They now got paid 30 hours per week, but that doesn't mean that there's other abuses happening at the workplace. But there's only 2 workplaces across New Brunswick that they get paid the 30 hours per week, and this is this one. And as a result of that fight, we created this food distribution program with MWAC. And this year, so far, in our side, we got 170 boxes distributed so far. And the issue is because we don't have, and the food depot doesn't have enough food boxes, we usually deliver 20 boxes every 2 weeks. And if there's 40 workers, they have to split those 20 boxes among those 40 workers, and we have to do it in a way that the employer will not find out. Like if the employer, I remember one time I was delivering food boxes and the employer came and I told him, I belong to a church and we're doing this, because I cannot tell them like we are migrant rights organization and telling people about their rights. So those are the challenges that we're finding with the food distribution. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we'll start breaking the myths, right? And temporary foreign workers that came to Canada and eat our food. No, they rely on food banks, they rely on organizations. They are hard worker people that go and buy even more expensive groceries at the local store because the local store has an agreement with the employer. Temporary foreign workers are coming to take our jobs. No, these are jobs that Employment and Social Development Canada has mentioned that nobody wants to do, or there is no Canadian or permanent resident that is willing to do this. Otherwise, they would have issued the LMIA. That's the second myth. Employers are taking our houses. They are temporary foreign workers are responsible for the housing crisis. No, they are living overcrowded conditions, 10, 15, 43 in one house. So those are the myths that we're breaking today. And thank you for coming. I believe you still have more to say. I just want to finish my intervention with, it's not only the employer or the recruitment agencies that are abusing the workers. It's also the government of Canada. Whenever an employer feels that they are being abused or at risk of abuse, they come to Niger, to me, to other members or MWAC or the MADU Center, asking for help to apply for an open work permit for vulnerable workers. This open work permit will allow them to work in any other company around Canada. And what started in 2019 in British Columbia as a temporary solution and took 5 to 10 days to be processed by RCC, now it's taking 2 months. In those 2 months, the worker still has to go to the company. They cannot quit because they will not be able to get enough money to eat. The thing gets even worse if you, by any chance, you get a provincial nomination or a provincial endorsement. Because if you apply for the open work permit for vulnerable workers and leave the abusive company, the abusive company is going to report that you're no longer working for them. So government of New Brunswick is going to take away your endorsement and your provincial nomination, and you're going to lose everything. So it's not only the companies, it's not only the recruiters, it's also the government of Canada with IRCC and unfortunately the government of New Brunswick that is not providing any solution for temporary foreign workers.
Okay, let's see if we have time. Yeah. Sorry, this is a lot of information. Yeah. We only have 10 more minutes? Mm-hmm. So many people right now, especially right now that the Conservative Party wants to use immigration as a way to increase their popularity. They're saying that there is too many migrants coming in, which in reality, we've been seeing the trend from 2017 up to now, but there was a pause between 20 and 21 when COVID hit. We didn't get any migrants coming in. So the upsurge that we see, or the people are saying, is because we didn't receive that amount of migrants coming in. And right now, with this new government, is cutting more and reducing the number of migrants who are coming in. In small towns like Richibukto, for example, that people are desperate for migrants. And when you talk to them, to the locals, they say, no, we need these people. Because there's not enough, it's not the locals don't want to go and do this job, but it's the condition of the workplace. So we always said that the politician, instead of talking about the issues that they see, there's too many migrants, they should be talking about the rights and conditions at the workplace. If they raise the floor on those conditions and rights, more people are going to be able to work in those workplaces. We know that there's going to be, I believe, 100 or 500,000 people retiring soon by 2030. I don't know the exact number. So the question is how Canada is going to be replacing this labor force in agriculture, in transportation, in seafood industry. In New Brunswick, if migrant workers decide not to come or not to go to work, at the same time, they shut down the whole industry. And the industry is making like one or 2 billions per year. But their employers, they don't have enough money to pay a worker that they brought from Mexico or from the Philippines or from the Caribbean countries. So we're calling, that's what we're saying. The only way that these workers can access full rights is getting the permanent resident status. And we launched a campaign in 2018 calling for regularization. We include all the migrant workers, undocumented and temporary foreign workers. And we were close, but because the narrative has been changing a lot, and you know the politicians, they listen to the polls. And one thing that we're noticing is that people are saying, we have too many migrants. And when you go to Tim Horton, you're gonna see a migrant. So you're validating what you heard in the TikTok or in the news that they're taking over. Like so, this politician from Miramichi from the Conservative Party was saying that the invasion, we are the invaders. When we're reading this type of nonsense, and they're going to buy at your local store, and you see a migrant there, then you get the idea, oh yeah, they are taking over. But in reality, we are not taking over. So I'm just gonna open up for questions. But before, what can you do? That's the most important question, right?
Exactly.
What can you do? A couple things that you can do. One is, if you work for the government, try to talk about migrant workers' issues with your colleagues. Write to MP, to your local MP, and tell them how important it is to have migrant workers. And read more about migrant workers and the benefits that they're bringing into the communities. You can support local groups, like in Fredericton, volunteer with Malverma. If you speak more than one language, sometimes we have workers that they speak, like in my case, I don't speak French, and recently I've been having workers that speak French, so, volunteer by translating. If you see a migrant worker, talk to them. Tell them that they're welcome here. Make them feel like they're at home, so that way they will be able to express themselves a little bit more and tell you, you'll be surprised what you hear when you talk to them. There are a lot of professionals in New Brunswick doing these horrible jobs. I mean, a job is a job, but the conditions are horrible, so talk to them and participate in events and actions. That's the call to action today. And yeah, we have
10 more minutes for questions.
My name is Connor. I'm a union rep that's assigned to a lot of workplaces with a lot of temporary foreign workers and a lot of local workers. There's a seafood processing plant where everything you're saying is the exact same thing. Are you seeing that we can barely do anything because they send people home? But basically what's also coming up is a lot of myths in the local workers, thinking this is the employer's getting kickbacks from the government for bringing in foreign workers. Do you hear that a lot as well? It's basically every time I get asked, or is the employer getting kickbacks from the government for bringing in foreign workers? I see no evidence anywhere, but people never drop it. So do you see any evidence of it? I'm guessing not.
There is no evidence that the employers are getting kickback from the government. The only real thing is that with if a Canadian or a permanent resident start working in this place in those conditions, mostly they are going to go to employment standards or human rights when temporary foreign workers not going to do anything because they need this job. So why do they hire them? Cheap hand labor, it's easy to explain. No kickback, that's fine. Yes.
So yeah, do you guys offer services to asylum seekers and refugees as well in New Brunswick? The reason I'm asking this question is because I have family members and also friends who made the journey for 2 months, 3 months from Brazil to Colombia, Panama, Mexico, US, then they ended up in Canada, specifically in Toronto, Ontario. So yeah, like 3-4 months journey, walking in the jungles with human smugglers, like they did not complain about that. But after reaching Canada, so they're not getting that legal aid or maybe the processing and everything, so they have to wait for 2, 3, 4 years till they get their dates, court dates. Some of them go through depression and stress, so there's a lot of hardships involved. So do you guys like offer any services here in New Brunswick? Something like that?
For example, Model Burma has a partnership.
Because yeah, like they were thinking some of them that maybe like if they come to New Brunswick and they process their asylum cases from here, like those who are looking for PR, so usually they end up in New Brunswick and Atlantic Canada, yeah, something like that.
So Model Burma has a partnership with MWOC, for example, and we also have another partners. For example, the refugee clinic in Moncton. Whenever an asylum seeker comes to us, we refer them to them because they do have more capacity and more experience with them. So directly we do not, but we can refer you to someone.
So first, thank you so much for talking about these events about migrant workers in New Brunswick, Canada. Although a lot of them are not based in reality at all, like Canadian companies have to prove that they cannot find PR holders or citizens for a job before employing any other nationals. And another bit I want to bring up and ask about is that there's a sentiment going that Canadians, born Canadians, can't get anything done with Service New Brunswick, with the government applying for driver's licenses, IDs, getting affordable housing. And the sentiment is that, oh, we let these people come in so easily, get them everything. So I know a lot of it comes from like social media, comes from propaganda. So I was just wondering what campaign or project have you taken part in to help combat these ridiculous myths, and how can we help with that?
For example, let's talk about the health services, right? We just mentioned that the temporary foreign workers that come to Canada, they cannot access to Medicare, right? We have to separate them from permanent residents or for international students that they are covered by Medicare, right? They don't have Medicare. They do have to pay upfront to get services, to get health services. What campaign we have launched? We have launched a Sanctuary Network. So we're calling all service providers, dentists, doctors, physicians, physiotherapists, in case we have somebody that actually cannot access these services, and we try to help them. Last time, for example, we had a great dentist, Dr. Morales, in the province, who actually helped somebody that was in the Miramichi area by phone, right? Because they were not able to come to Fredericton or to Moncton, to bigger cities to get these services. She prescribed the antibiotics that she needed on phone. So, for example, this Sanctuary Network is one of the campaigns that we are launching. Also, we have a legal clinic here at the Madu Center. Whenever some temporary foreign workers cannot access to legal aid, we help them to do that. We have had cases in which the migrant workers they cannot access their CRA accounts because it's the employer that has all the passwords and everything. So yeah, so with this legal clinic, we try to help them. Food distribution, they cannot access food banks, for example. So it's another myth. They are not taking our food. They are not taking our healthcare system. First, over there.
So something to add. It's about the dental services, like when we're talking, when the conversation is about like temporary foreign workers accessing all these services, the new dental care program, what's it called? The Canadian Dental Care Plan. If you have a spouse or common law partner outside of Canada, you're not eligible to receive these services. So that really kind of discriminates, like for dental services for temporary foreign workers. I work in the sector of
Erin is our social worker. Thank you very much. Oh, we have a question over here, and then 2 more questions, and then we'll go.
Thank you a lot for speaking about this today. I really appreciate it. A lot of us, like, I live in St. Andrews, close by to St. George and other areas that have a lot of migrant workers, and sometimes you kind of hear rumors of things happening. When you do hear, something, an injustice is happening, who's the best place for like me to go to get help for those people?
Migrant workers
yeah.
for changing.
You can I'll give you my information, and the way we work is a little bit different than other organizations. When we know or receive a call that something is happening in a specific area or workplace, I usually have contacts all over the Atlantic with workers, so I start asking those workers to give me the lead and to set up a meeting with them in an area that is not their house or their small town. So we pay them for transportation, we take it to a different area, and we have a meeting. But we only have the meeting with those workers who trust themselves. Like, we made a mistake back in the days to go open and talk to the workers and talk about workers' rights and let's fight and unionize and stuff like that. And it didn't work out because they're being controlled by the employers. So as soon as the employer knows that you're involved or talking to the workers, there's a lot of reprisal for them.
Another thing that you can do is, for example, here at the Madu Center, we have a lot of postcards upstairs. Whenever a temporary foreign worker has any issue, the first thing that they do is go to here in Flake is the MCAF, the multicultural. In Miramichi is the MRNA.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you can take, I'm not sure if they have a multicultural center in St. Andrews, it might be. Just take some postcards and just deliver them. So whenever somebody needs help, they will have our name, our number over there, and it will be easier for them to contact. We have this partnership with CAFI in Moncton, Magma, MCAF here, Miramichi Center, Edmundston Center. So the more we spread the word, it's better for the workers so they can have somebody that to take action from them, right? So if you guys looking to get some postcards, I have a lot upstairs. Please take them to your cities, to the places that you know that are the migrant workers visit, and spread the word. Spread the word. We're here. We want to be part of the solution, and let's fight all together. One last question. Yes, sir.
May I quickly add something? It'll take less than a minute. Can I add something?
Yeah.
So my name is Alan. I'm an international student. I won't take more than a minute of your time. So Nigel ended up his session by saying, when you see a migrant, please talk to them. So I'm addressing all the white people in this room. As a colored person, we felt frightened in our own spaces, from our apartment, houses, and no need to say about public spaces. So we might not be approachable, we might not appear to be approachable because of the extreme racism that's happening here. So we might not see when your friendly smiles. So kindly give us a pass. We are good deep inside. It's because we are frightened in public spaces, and we lost that good smiles in responses to you people. And kindly talk about what we discussed here in your families and in your communities as well. Please, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, guys.